Hello, welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, a podcast where I go over the Last Dragon Chronicles by Krista Lacey. Today we'll be going over chapters 13 through 18 of the Firestar third book in the series. I hope you had a safe flight in and hit no turbulence. With that, let's get into the show. We left off last week with David and Xana heading into town to get some supplies, and as they were kind of talking back and forth inside of the supply shop, there was a bear that started to attack the back of the truck. Back in Wayward Crescent, Gadzooks, Lucy, and Liz were all trying to figure out what was going on and who let Gretel out at the same time that Greth disappeared in just a flashing bright light. We left the two bears, Thorin and Ingvar, on the other side of the ice, waiting for their opportunity to cross the water and follow the star to the town. And that's where we pick up. We're going to go into chapter 13, An Unwelcome Surprise. We pick up back at Wayward Crescent, where the whole house is completely shook about Graith disappearing. Liz and Lucy are kind of just gobsmacked. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what to say or do. Gretel starts freaking out and hurries over to a bunch of flowers, trying to make potions and make sense of what's going on. Gadzooks is trying to count the stars, holding them in his memory because he doesn't have his pencil or his pad. He has to restart it several times. 1, 2, 24, 36, so on and so forth. Lucy tells Liz to check Gretel out and make sure that she gets locked back up. Liz says that might be a little hasty and apologizes to Gretel, saying that it was wrong of her to lock her up in the first place. Liz turns over to Lucy and says she's not quite sure if what's happening is really bad or malevolent. We only know that Graith is connected to the universe in a deep way, so whatever is going on might be working in their favor as well. While all this is going on, they hear some rustling next door, and they believe that Mr. Bacon is back from a trip. We don't really know where he was at. That was my first question on the note here. Where did Bacon go? Why did he go? How long did he go? But they are saying that they're noticing him back a day earlier than he's supposed to be. Liz wants to talk to David, so she calls him on the phone and rings the study lab phone number. She got the voicemail, and Lucy brings up a good point that they might be able to get a message quicker and on deeper understanding through Gadzooks to David. Liz agrees, so she tells Lucy to send David the Mark of Omara, the 3 squiggly lines. Lucy gets kind of hesitant, but says okay. Liz sends Gadzooks to go down and get his pad, and Lucy to go invite Mr. Bacon over for a cup of tea. Lucy thinks that's a little weird with everything going on, but Liz says that it's going to be a nice sense of normalcy, being able to have Bacon's presence, something that's been steady and consistent over the years of him being the neighbor, and it'd be a nice little welcoming home present. Lucy and Gadzooks pass each other on the staircase. Gadzooks looked kind of worried, but Lucy didn't pay any attention. And it said in the book that if she would have given 2 seconds, that Gadzooks would have let her know that his pen and paper had been stolen. That's kind of where that chapter leaves off. I wasn't sure who stole his papers or why. My first thought was maybe it disappeared along with Graith, since Graith was the last one to touch them and started writing down the stars and connecting the dots. But we will learn what happened to them later on. So that's going to bring us into chapter 14, Xana in Danger. And before I read anything, I was trying to kind of connect some dots myself and see where that might go. Is she going to be in danger because of Gwilanna? Is she going to be in danger because of the bears? We do know that since they're heading into town and the bears are going there too, it's the perfect opportunity. Because Gwilanna had said as long as the bear touches Xana, she would be able to kind of not necessarily mind control her, but put her under a trance to be able to get the tooth from David. So as we open up into this new chapter, the bear is still attacking the back of the truck. Albert starts grabbing his gun and heading out the door, and David starts to freak out too. He says, "Don't kill the bear, don't shoot him, don't hurt him." And Albert shoots kind of above the bear, seeming more to scare him than anything, trying to get him away from the truck. During all this hectic motion going on, the shopkeeper's wife comes in. I forgot her name. That's on me. That's my bad. I'll let editing Diego pop in there. But so the shopkeeper's wife pops in and tells Xana that she needs to stay inside, and is she able to see it? Xana can't see what's going on, and out of nowhere, she just sees David running out of the door. So then Xana gets pretty scared, and she wants to make sure that David is okay. She heads out onto just the landing, and it seems like it's a pretty high landing, because towards the middle of this chapter, Xana is trying to point out the bear. There's a bunch of people out on the streets kind of pointing to where it might be laying low. Albert can't see him because they think that he's hiding between the cars and everything. And then David is sitting there yelling at the same time, yelling at Albert, "Don't shoot him, don't hurt him." And Xana's yelling at David. So there's a whole bunch of commotion going on, villagers screaming because of the bear, David yelling at Albert, Xana yelling at David, the shopkeeper yelling at Xana, and it's just everywhere all at once. In the middle of all this commotion, though, Xana realizes that there's a second bear just chilling and watching in the center of the street. While her focus is on the bear in the street, a second one comes up and just knocks over the porch. Takes one swipe of his massive paw and destroys it. She falls 8 feet down to the ground, and it's kind of a scary scene. We don't know what the bear's going to do. The bear kind of takes one look at Xana, and what I'm guessing is realizes that it sees the mark on her arm. We don't get to know if this is Ingvar and Thorn at all. They're not named in the chapter. David hadn't written that part in his story yet. So these could just be two totally random bears. The bear is recognizing Xana, looking at her arm, and is going to raise his paw again. At this moment, David notices and is yelling at Xana, "Don't let him touch you. Don't let him touch you." At this moment, David's coming over to help him as well. The bear's lifting his paw, about to swipe, and Tatuga, the Inuit leader that's helping them at the study base, comes and beats the bear with a club, kind of knocking him down a little bit. And then Tatuga runs too, just to make sure that he's safe. At that moment, the ranger comes in and shoots the bear with a fast-acting tranquilizer. After the bear is subdued, they find that the bear had been shot once in the shoulder, giving us confirmation that that definitely was Ingvar. And that brings us to the end of that chapter. There was no mention on if the older bear Thorn had been shot as well or not, or if he was captured. They just said that they got this one bear right here. So is Thorn an immortal bear? Is this guy a shapeshifter as well, kind of like Bergstrom? I thought Bergstrom was Laurel, but there seems to be some confusion on my end. Maybe I'm just not a critical reader like I like to think that I am. But I'm sure we'll get that answer later on. So now let's get into chapter 15, As Above, So Below. As Lucy goes to knock on Mr. Bacon's door to invite him over, she notices that the door's just wide open. There's no lights on in the house whatsoever, and it's kind of eerie feeling. So she opens the door and takes a step in just to see if Mr. Bacon's there, and she calls out, "Henry?" Out of nowhere, a lady with a two-piece suit shows up, just old and wretched looking. Through that description, we know that that's Gwilanna. That's messed up, dude. Why is she here? Gwilanna is sitting there grilling Lucy and making her answer all the questions of everything that's been going on recently. Gwilanna says that David has no ancient bloodline or connection to the dragons, but he possesses exceptional abilities between him and Gadzooks. She explains to Lucy that his writing ability not only mirrors real life, but somewhat predicts it, and his abilities are growing stronger. Gwilanna says that at the time that David wrote the story about Snigger the squirrel, he could only write about a couple, maybe 10 seconds ahead in the future before the events actually took place. But recently in this new story, it's about a day ahead. Gwilanna also tells Lucy that she's featured in the story. This confuses Lucy a lot because she's not sure why David would be writing about Gwilanna, especially if he does have these abilities. I'm not sure if David even knows about this yet, or if he just thinks it's a big old coincidence. But she's upset because why would David write about somebody so evil and incorporate her into this thing? So now this is both Lucy and Xana on the same page as me about, if you are noticing these coincidences between your story and real life, why take the chance and write something that could put yourself at jeopardy? I mean, David in his new book wrote about the bears coming for the tooth that's on him. By proxy, that puts him in extreme danger. Lucy doesn't want to keep talking and she decides to shut her mouth. And Gwilanna kind of predicted this. So, in order to keep her talking, she brought a wicker basket with an animal inside. She shoved it at Lucy's face, and Lucy recognized the animal as the squirrel, Snigger. Gwilanna says that she's using him as a chess piece and as a hostage, and that if Lucy does not answer her questions or do what Gwilanna wants, she's going to kill the squirrel. While Gwilanna is going on through this little threatening phase, she also explains that time does not truly exist. It's just how you perceive it, and at different parts of the world, it might be at a different time to some others. Gwilanna also says that the stars are starting to align in an ancient way, the same way as when dragons were first introduced. So she believes that it's time for the dragons to return. Lucy gets a weird feeling about this because she feels like Gwilanna is talking about the one and only Gawain, which is an interesting thing to me because, it would make sense if dragons are going to be reintroduced in some way, shape, or form. If this whatever god figure in this universe is going to just reintroduce them. They did it once, so they don't need anything extra to be put in. They could just recreate dragons. I don't know why we would need to bring back a dragon that's already lived his entire lifespan. Let the dude rest, give him peace, send him back to the earth, just like it always has. But if there's this new star that's aligning and it's going to give the world all these magical powers, I don't see why we can't just bring a whole new age of brand new dragons. That's just me. Maybe Gwilanna has a plan for Gawain, but we won't know that for at least a couple of books. I don't even remember when it comes in. But after she's done talking about Gawain, there's kind of a lull in their conversation, and the chapter just cuts off right there. Gives you a good little cliffhanger on wanting to know why Gawain. Like I was just questioning myself. Why does he need to be brought back? What is he going to do? What purpose does he serve for Gwilanna? I would just like to know Gwilanna's evil plan. It'd be nice to be able to get into her mind and just see it from a bird's eye view. But that's going to bring us into chapter 16, Dressing Down. We get a little bit of a time jump in this chapter. Not too much. I'm guessing maybe a couple hours or so. But we return to David and Xana already back at the lab. Bergstrom's sitting there doing his work, grading some papers, and he's pretty upset giving them a small lecture. He's talking about the bear's abilities and says that they're ginormous. They're about 1,000 pounds. Standing up on its hind legs can be about 16 feet tall and could knock a dude's head off, a human's head off, with just one swipe of his paw as easily as we would smush an ant. And so, with that being said, they kind of made the entire study lab look bad because of their training. Even though they had proper training, David didn't follow them. Neither did Xana. You're supposed to play dead. But instead, they were making a big old ruckus and noise. So Bergstrom's telling them that it's probably best to lay low for the time being. During this conversation, Xana is telling Dr. Bergstrom to read David's story. She keeps bringing this up even though there's other people inside of the conversation. Tatuga's in the room, Russell is in the room. And so at the mention of the story in Gwilanna, Bergstrom kind of nods his head over to the door and he escorts both Russell and Tatuga out so they can have a little bit more of a private conversation. Xana is begging Dr. Bergstrom to read this story, basically, and she keeps telling him that Gwilanna's in there as well as bears, and he needs to understand everything. Bergstrom starts to head towards the computer to read it, but David gets this feeling that he just needs to delete it. He says, "No, don't even worry about it. I'm just going to toss it." Bergstrom does try to stop him and reminds him, he goes, "Hold on, you have a contract." And David's not sure if he's meaning the verbal agreement that him and Bergstrom had made about him writing about the Arctic and trying to bring continuous awareness to what's going on, or if Bergstrom was talking about the publishing contract that David has and that he has to write another story. Even though Bergstrom brought these points to David's attention, David still deletes it, and that still wasn't enough for Xana. Xana tells him to defrag the computer, making sure that he wipes all parts of that story no matter what. David is hesitant, which to me I found a little funny because if you were already in the mindset of deleting it, then I don't see why defragging it and making it to where there's no possibility of any of that ever happening again or, that story coming back. Why, or were you just going to take it back out of the trash? What's the point then, dude? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just think that it was a weird situation for David to feel hesitant on because he had already deleted it. After he was done defragging the computer, though, Xana gets up in a huff and puff and says that I hope David feels better because we're over and the story is over. She breaks up with him and just walks off, doesn't say anything else after that. And with that heavy note on David's heart, we end that chapter. I do kind of wish that we got 2 chapters per uh, per point of view, I should say. 2 chapters for the Bears, 2 chapters for David and Xana, 2 chapters for the Penny Kettles. That would give us a little bit more time to be able to sit in there and develop more with the story. But this one chapter hopping back and forth, it doesn't really give you time to rest and you want to know what's going on. So it works out, but me personally, I wish we got a little bit more time to just sit and resonate in what's going on. I would have liked to see an interaction between David and Xana afterwards, or if he's going to apologize, if he's going to try to fix it, if he's just going to give her space. What Bergstrom thinks of all this, because this is kind of a small space. I think there's only less than 10 people all together in this tiny, tiny shed, basically doing a bunch of research. So you're spending all day with these people, and it would just be terrible to be sitting in these feelings and awkwardness. But that's going to take us to chapter 17, Taken. Lucy's starting to get chatterboxy again, and she lets slip to Gwilanna that there's a new dragon. She tells him about groin. I'm not sure how to say that. Kind of sounds like I'm saying groin, but it's spelled Groyne. So if you guys know how to say it better than me, shoot me an email. The email is gadzooksTheLastDM@gmail.com. Would love to hear it. I'm not too sure, so I'm just going to keep going with groin. Anyway, Gwilanna kind of brushes this off. She doesn't give any thought to it. She says that the girl must be at work, which I'm guessing she means Xana, saying that her powers are inconsequential to hers and eventually she will come groveling to her, as well as Liz. In 3 months' time, when the stars align and everything is right, both Liz and Xana will come groveling to her for their abilities. Lucy asks Gwilanna why she thinks Liz will come back to her, and Liz says that she's been a traitor to her own bloodline. When the stars align in 3 months in February, she will want to know, or she will want to help put the world back together with dragons. After all this, though, Gwilanna turns without saying a word and rips a hole through space. It just looks like a ripple, something out of like a sci-fi movie, almost. turns to Lucy and tells her to come. Lucy does not want to by any means. She almost starts fighting Gwilanna and starts yelling for her mom. After the first yell, though, Gwilanna reminds her of Snigger, throws the basket on the ground, causing Snigger to be upset, kind of squeal a little bit, causing Lucy to kind of tighten up and follow Gwilanna in any instruction. Gwilanna takes Lucy and just walks straight through the veil that she created and kidnaps her. And it's kind of scary. I mean, I know this is a fantasy book, but for any child to be taken um, is just horrible, especially with the world that we actually live in now. Uh, whatever kind of research you do or how up to date you are with the current world events going on. I'm in the US, so we have a pretty big border crisis going. If there's, if you're anywhere near the Israel and Palestine, or maybe Russia and Ukraine, there's a lot of children going missing, a lot of death going around, and so maybe it's just me kind of putting those together, but I couldn't imagine losing my daughter. And the craziest thing about that is that Liz doesn't even know. She sent Lucy to go get bacon for tea, so I don't know how long Liz is going to go without thinking, hey, Lucy's been gone for a while, maybe I need to go check on her. But from the feeling of these chapters, it seems like Gwilanna and Lucy were only talking for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Um, but yeah, so a child being taken is kind of a big deal. That means Graith is gone, Lucy is gone, David and Xana are no longer there, so Liz is kind of left with this house full of dragons and nobody to help her out. I'm sure she's going to be stressed and almost, here's the pun for snare, like a basket case. My question is, does Gwilanna know where Graith is going to be? Lucy had to shut her mouth when she figured out that Gwilanna didn't know everything that was going on. So I don't think she gave away that Graith disappeared. But if he's gone and Gwilanna kind of has that connection to the supernatural / spirit world, it would make sense that she'd be able to find him possibly. So are they going to the same place? Are they going to stop Graith? Or are they going to help Graith? From my understanding, Graith thought that his wish wasn't really completed. The wish that David made about knowing about the fire tier. Even though we know that the Arctic was created from it, and, also created the polar bears, there must be more to the story that we're missing as well. Why was it created into the Arctic instead of going back down? I know Gaia showed up towards the end of the story and made it so, but what was that decision? If that decision was made by her and Gwen wasn't able to rest peacefully, I feel like that sucks, man. Like it was her doing and her natural order originally to make the dragons come back to the earth in clay form after shedding their tear. So when Guinevere made the choice to give it back, it should have gone all the way. And since Gaia was the one to make the decision to create the Arctic through the fire tier, I feel like Gwen should have the opportunity or should have been able to rest peacefully in the first place. Uh, I would have some bones to pick with Gaia and have a conversation with her myself if I could, but this Gaia is a creation of Crystal Lacey. So eventually, Chris, I'd love to talk to you about it. I'll be reaching out here shortly. And so that's actually going to bring us to chapter 18 now. Groin returns. After Xana leaves, David is left in the room alone with Dr. Bergstrom. And Dr. Bergstrom is telling David the same things kind of that they were talking about earlier. that David's actions has put the lab in jeopardy and that he might need to lay low for a little bit. The reputation is that the study has always been good about training their people. Now that David and Xana were up in arms in front of the entire village about the bears, people are starting to second guess it. Bergstrom has the same feelings that I did about this breakup with it being such a small place. But he tells David to go to Xana later after she's cooled off and had some time to think, and then try to fix it in the way that David thinks that he needs to. He's not telling David to fix the relationship and make them date again. He's mostly telling him just to make sure that there's peace amongst them because again only there's only a small amount of people in this lab, and it would be hard to have to tiptoe around everything just to get work done. During this conversation, Bergstrom also tells David that he got a message from Liz on the phone and that he just needs to call back as soon as possible. Before walking out, David gets very serious and he tells Bergstrom that he has one last thing he needs to say. Bergstrom looks up from all the papers that he's grading and researching, and David tells him that he lost the tooth. Which is kind of a big reveal because we know that David's whole story revolves around this tooth. He wrote that Gwilanna told Ingavar to go and grab it. He needed to touch Xana, and Xana would grab the tooth from him. But that didn't happen at all. From what I understand, Ingvar was going to touch Xana, didn't get to before he was shot by the tranquilizer. So Xana wasn't touched, she didn't take the tooth, but David lost it in all the chaos, is what he's saying. Bergstrom does take a second. He looks off into the distance and then to David, and he tells David that the tooth was really just a ward against evil. And it's possible that it's done its job. Obviously, since this is only book 3 out of 7, its job is not quite done yet. I want to know if David's going to get this tooth back, if it's gone forever. Where did the tooth go? Does Ingvar have it? We haven't had a chapter yet with the bears again, which I find kind of strange. Out of all these chapters and sections going through, I would love to be able to talk to Thorn again and see what that old wise bear has to say about everything. And especially with Gwilanna, I wonder, you know what, that's actually a good question. Is Gwilanna bringing Lucy over to Cambridge as well? If she knows that Ingvar has the tooth, then she's obviously going to collect it like she's been wanting. Why bring Lucy there? What does Lucy have to do with it? I do believe that Lucy has some fantastic power that's maybe untapped or stronger than most of Guinevere's descendants. She did make Grith, who seems to be one of the most powerful wishing dragons ever to be made, which also brings me to another question. How many wishing dragons have been made? Liz said that it's very hard to make one, period, especially one that works. Has Liz tried? Has she been successful? I haven't heard of another wishing dragon yet. Haven't read about one. Maybe it was in the past and she's giving them away. Who would she give them away to? Who would even know about how to use these? And would that person even make the right wish? We know that the wish has to be beneficial to dragons and good overall. So somebody like Gwilanna obviously can't make a wish. I mean, I'm sure she would make a wish to, air quotations, benefit dragons just by bringing them back or finding more information on them somehow. But she would be trying to use that for, her own twisted ways, which in my mind means that there's no way the wish could be granted since there's uh, malevolent thought processing behind it. With that being said, this conversation between David and Bergstrom continues. David thinks back to his story and the two bears over there at the town. David says that there was two bears. Bergstrom hesitates but says that the town only reported one. David takes a second and calls Bergstrom out for being Thorin. He says, "Are you the old bear?" Which again, that gets me because I thought that in the second book when David was meeting all the bears and Bergstrom had transformed, Or no, I guess I'm wrong because Laurel was there as part of the Nine Bears, and Bergstrom was sitting right next to him. And Bergstrom does say that he's Thorin, so maybe Thorin himself is the spirit bear that Bergstrom turns into. So Thorin may not be immortal per se, but when Bergstrom transforms, he gets all of Thorin's memories and obviously abilities as a bear. So that's interesting. I'll have to read more and try to pay better attention. But Bergstrom doesn't confirm or deny. He doesn't say anything. He just goes back to doing his paper, his research. David leaves the room, and then out of nowhere, we're staying in the room with Bergstrom. He's kind of hunched over, and there's like a little shimmer of just space in front of Bergstrom, like something small, a creature that's invisible, was standing there. He makes himself seen, and it's described as a bird-like dragon. So I'm not sure what that means, if this dragon has more of a beak than a snout, or if he's got more feathers than scales. Not sure what a bird-like dragon looks like since they both have wings and everything. But it says that Groin shows up and he relays all the information to Dr. Bergstrom. He tells him about Graith, tells him about Gretel being set free. Bergstrom asks about Graith and asks him how far did he go. Groin just says all the way back to the beginning. Bergstrom takes a second and confirms that Graith is a special dragon if he's going that far. So that brings me, like, what did Graith do? What was in the flour and the smoke that Graith ingested to send him all the way back? Because I figured the only way that his abilities could be triggered was through a wish. I don't think you can make a wish through a flower and incense, but apparently Dr. Bergstrom did. So now we know that Graith is on a trip through space and time somehow and going to the way, way back. Now, does this mean back to the beginning of the Gwaine days? Are we going to see Gwaine's life and his death? Or are we going on before that when Gaia decided to introduce dragons into the world the first time? That would make sense to me, seeing that the stars are realigning, as Gwilanna was saying, to bring dragons back. So if Graith can learn how they were first introduced to then come and be an usher of the new age of dragons would be a huge help. That way we don't have to depend on Gwilanna in the evil doings. We do have Xana, who is the new Sybil, and hopefully she can take over that kind of role and learn. I don't know if Xana would want to extend her life in the way that Gwilanna did. Usually in most fantasy settings, whether it's a movie or a book or uh, any story that you want to tell, in order to get immortality, you have to go through some gray spaces, some gray areas, and do some shady stuff. So Xana seems, even though she's got the goth aesthetic, she strikes me as a good person. I don't think she would be taking anybody's life to extend her own. She would definitely not be taking a dragon's life. So it just makes me wonder where the story's gonna go. It just makes me wonder the direction of Gwilanna, Xana, and Graith, and how those three are going to be connected in bringing back the dragons. Again, I remember little, here and there, just the big events of these books, but it's been over 15 years since I've read these suckers, so the minute details are still a little fuzzy. After Groin relays all of this information, Bergstrom kind of shakes his hand and Groin turns back into this talisman. I'm guessing it's the same one that Bergstrom handed to David and had him shake, and it gave him the picture in his mind. But Bergstrom tells after he's done putting away the talisman into his drawer, he's kind of talking to himself, and he says that this is a good thing that all this happened because they almost knew too soon. And he was talking about the stars realigning and everything kind of coming to the same place, which is interesting because I would think the more information you have, the sooner the better, because it gives you time to prepare and, make a plan on what's going to go on. If they need to stop Gwilanna from doing something, we need to know now. I don't know why Bergstrom is holding back information. I'm bringing back the joke of, he's the Chiron of this story, like from Percy Jackson and TNO. Mike is always making jokes about Chiron, the Centaur Mentor, coming in to ruin the plot and slow down progress by not giving any information or stopping the characters from giving out crucial plot points. So Bergstrom's here to stay. We'll get more stories from him since she is the storytelling bear. But man, it's tough to read those eyes. That does bring us to the end of this section, though. Thank you guys so much. I plan on having a guest on here soon. I appreciate you guys coming. We'll see you next week. Have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.